2 weeks ago, I was gifted Titanfall 2 on Steam, a game that had just exploded once more after the servers had been rinsed of their filth. And that's when I started posting Titanfall 2 content on YouTube, and the comments on those videos told me one thing. This game is something special, and I needed to dive deeper to find out what this cult following was so passionate about. And what I found blew me away. I'm not sure what I was expecting when I began Titanfall 2's single-player campaign for the first time. I mean, here's a sequel to a multiplayer-only experience, and this time around they decide to implement a single-player experience. I'm not sure what it is about that just kind of makes me feel like it's there for the sake of having one without putting as much effort and passion into it as the multiplayer, which is the primary experience of the game. I acknowledge that this is completely unfair, and I hate that I think that way because I'm sure I've missed out on some really good single-player experiences because of this. Anyway, I was told to give Titanfall 2's campaign a shot, and boy, am I glad that I did. Immediately you're dropped, literally, into the action. Taking control of Rifleman Jack Cooper, you're transformed into a pilot following the death of your mentor, Captain Lastimosa. This is where perhaps one of the most likable and well-written characters ever is introduced, Vanguard-class Titan BT-7274. Now it's up to you to sabotage the IMC-controlled planet of Typhon to shift the tide of the frontier war in the militia's favor. Now the single-player experience is short, clocking in at around 4 or 5 hours, but the sheer amount of genuine storytelling, clever dialogue, mission variety, and level design packed into a 5-hour experience is something to behold. It's made clear from the beginning that the primary focus of this campaign is the gameplay itself. This is the true movement tutorial, and it is done extremely well. The gauntlet at the beginning provides a timed obstacle course for you to test your abilities and set your own record on the board. Boy, was I ever absolute garbage the first time I tried it. But as the campaign continues, the levels throw obstacles at you left and right that you end up just subconsciously doing. The level design in this game, whether you happen to acknowledge it or not, is constantly improving your abilities to utilize the game's movement system, and by the end of the campaign you will notice a substantial improvement if you decide to rerun that gauntlet again. The story itself is also very interesting. It's packed with little story details for you to find, and a relationship between Jack Cooper and BT that reminds me a lot of Reyes and Ethan from Infinite Warfare.
My mission is you. Who says? I'm hardware, sir. Ultimately.
I know a lot of people dog on that game, but the campaign is genuinely fantastic, in fact maybe one of the best in the franchise. Anyway, Cooper and BT have an extremely well-written relationship in Titanfall 2 single player. I also really like that there's dialogue options for Cooper, which is something rarely seen in short single-player FPS games, especially games where the multiplayer experience is the main focus. The implementation of dialogue options adds just another layer of immersion and really makes you feel like you are Jack Cooper and you are learning the ropes of becoming a pilot and learning your way around these massive war machines. Throughout the campaign, there's a really strong sense of accomplishment, especially after you've succeeded in any of the game's many boss fights against other enemy titans. It really is a game of trial and error, at least in my experience playing for the first time. I would mention perhaps one of the greatest video game endings I've ever played, but seeing as this game is blowing up again and there's a lot of new players like myself joining the community, I'll save the spoiler, but if you know, you know. Titanfall 2 single player, while short, is an absolute blast that should not be ignored should you choose to pick up this game for the first time. It is truly brilliant. Titanfall 2's multiplayer was my first experience with the game, and boy, is the very clear learning curve ever intimidating. However, I have never seen a community more eager to help new players learn the ropes, and I can see why. Fans of this game have been waiting years for it to get the attention it deserves, and rightfully so. I mean, the multiplayer is so good. It takes everything that makes arcade, arena, movement shooters, well, fun, and mashes it all together into this chaotic but fluid, balanced, and innovative experience that boasts the smoothest movement I have ever felt in any FPS I've ever played. There also isn't a massive arsenal of weapons to choose from. Instead, you get a much smaller but fair amount of weapons of all types that are properly balanced. Every single weapon in this game does exactly what it's supposed to do: get kills. They all do it, some much harder than others, but every single weapon in this game has the ability to absolutely dominate the battlefield if it's in the right hands, because the best weapon in this entire game is movement. Every single map in Titanfall 2's multiplayer is meticulously crafted to work with the game's movement system. Tons of verticality, 1,000 different ways to get from point A to point B. The level of freedom that the game's design gives you is actual insanity. And that doesn't even account for some of the tools you're given to make movement even faster. You can grapple to hard-to-reach places, you can use that grapple to attach to structures above you and swing around the map like Spider-Man, you can use gravity stars to absolutely launch you at goddamn Mach 3. The fun to be had in Titanfall 2's multiplayer, even in learning the game, is endless. And if that wasn't enough for you, frontier defense is a thing. Think classic survival mode from Call of Duty, give it 7 shots of adrenaline, crank it up to 11, rip the knob off, and f***ing burn it. Even on the easiest setting, frontier defense is the ultimate test of skill and strategy. The rules are simple. Defend the harvester and its shield from 5 waves of increasingly difficult enemies. Partying up with 3 friends and playing frontier defense is a top-tier experience. It's hard, but it's the sort of challenge that is genuinely fun. I often find myself laughing as a response to actual terror as a wall of 15 nuke titans march over the horizon, which is something I applaud because a lot of the time I'd probably call it rigged, let out a couple of exaggerated sighs, and stop playing. Not here though. It seems Respawn has used some form of single-frame subliminal messaging to brainwash me into never wanting to put the game down. I'm sure I could go on and on about what makes this game so great, but I don't want to ramble for too long. So Titanfall 2 gets a 9.5 out of 10 from me, packed with innovative and stupidly fun content that'll keep you busy for a very long time. Like 7 years probably. If you're like me and ignored this game forever, then also be like me and stop it. Get Titanfall 2.